we're just past the budget fiasco, right? Of the turn of the federal fiscal year, which was October 1st of 2024, was the beginning of the federal fiscal year. And prior to that, right, because we're talking about what we're going to be seeing as we lean forward, right? And what we can anticipate here is some scrutiny on the VA, and it's not going to be an easy thing to go to Congress and ask for anything outside the norm, because they're going to go, are you blowing smoke? Because, you've cried wolf before. Just a quick recap is when the VA presented its budget request back in whatever month, maybe March or so of 2024, they said essentially everything looks good. We should be able to operate at the levels we're at, and everything looks great. Meanwhile, remember, the PACT Act's already in place. Many people are filing claims. All this stuff's going on. And guess what? Claims don't get decided overnight. They take months. So you can anticipate, and you have all the data. Imagine, Clay, you are a data freak. So if you had access to all that data dumped into a spreadsheet, you'd be able to, roll that magic 8 ball and get all kinds of different peeks into the future. So, what's the denial rate? What's the average award compensated? What's the average back pay? All of these types of numbers are now at your fingertips, really. So it wasn't until after the House had already formalized and finalized their version of the budget for the federal government, and then I think it was the Appropriations Committee on the Senate side got done with kind of their portion of it, that the VA came back and said, "Oh, well, guess what? We were wrong. We need $3 billion actually before the end of this fiscal year, which was the end of September of 2024. We need $3 billion to ensure that we can pay out our disability benefits to our veterans. And oh, by the way, there's another $12 billion that we're going to be short for next fiscal year, which is now we're in, of $12 billion. So $15 billion total. Well, the fiscal year came and went, the beginning, and the VA somehow was actually positive $5 billion on their veterans benefit side, which means they weren't short $3 billion. It meant that they're actually surplus $2 billion. So their accounting went from we're fine to we're short $3 billion to, oh, we're over $2, but you gave us $3, so now we're over $5 billion. I'm pretty sure I could do better. So then we got the Veterans Healthcare Administration, which has the $12 billion, and the VA recently, I don't remember when, maybe a month and a half ago or so, came out and said, oh, well, you know what, that $12 billion that we're going to be short, it's actually like $6 billion instead of 12. So they were 50% off, and off at a $6 billion amount. Ridiculous. Your thoughts on that, Clay?
Yeah, so my wife probably wouldn't want me to share this, but she's not going to watch this anyways, at least not an hour in. But she's a finance manager, okay? And so she always talks about big budgeting stuff for government contracts and all that stuff. And basically, they have a rule called over-under, and they generally do a 5 to 10% buffer. And if you just look at those numbers, that's way beyond the buffer. And what I'm alluding to is whoever does that budgeting finance either one made a huge mistake, multiple big mistakes, I should say, or two is not good at their job. Now I'm probably leaning on number one, which a byproduct of that is not being good at your job anyways. But yeah, it's just when you take that budget issue and then you take the other factors of, okay, government spending's in the spotlight. Right now, government spending is like a top priority for the House, the Senate, and the president. That's a big deal. Okay. You look at other spotlights like community care. okay, saying, hey, VHA, how are you over budget 12 billion, psych 6 billion? If we just do community care, we'll actually save money, right? So you have all these other factors at play that really lead into, yes, in 2025, there are going to be massive changes from 25 to 27. I would expect the biggest VA changes to happen since, well, I guess the PACT Act is the biggest one, but prior to the PACT Act, it was like never. Okay, the VA basically sucked until the PACT Act came around, and then now all of a sudden it's in the spotlight. Would be a very quick way to say it.
Well, I don't know. Let me jump in there real quick. I don't know about that. The Mission Act was pretty sweet. The AMA, the Appeals Modernization Act, was also fantastic because that's what created the ability to do higher level review, the supplemental claim, or choose the the Board of Veterans Appeals directly. And then also Blue Water Navy was huge for Vietnam era. All right, I know you're too young for that, but that was a big one. So there was some big things. PACT Act was great. Don't get me wrong. That was really impactful for Gulf War. Absolutely the most impactful thing for Gulf War that's ever been. But prior to that, there was these other things that were pretty good.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna have like the scale that PACT Act changed things. I think we're gonna have that again, not in this year because legislation takes time, but within that 2-year span, I think we're gonna have major, like for real, major changes on VA healthcare specifically. VA changes are gonna, I mean, that's probably gonna happen this year. And then how the VA keeps records, like the electronic health record management system, whatever they're calling it, which I'm no expert on that, but I can tell you, hearing from VHA staff on the West Coast, because it's an Oregon, Washington State thing right now, they're not big fans. And actually, someone's suing the VA over EHR right now, so that'll be fun. But yeah, those are my thoughts on budgeting. Is there's so many factors at play. The VA's fumbling. They've been fumbling. There's other entities looking at government spending. The VA is listen, the VA spends money. Okay, second largest federal entity. It's not really their fault. I always describe VHA as picking up the pieces, right? DoD does a really bad job at exposing service members to Agent Orange, right? At this service member's expense. And then you have the suicide issue. DoD does not care about your suicide. Okay, you complete the mission, you get your DD-214, peace, you're gone. That relationship's over. And so VA is left to blame and pick up these pieces. So I don't want to seem like I'm blaming them, because like the suicide issue, in my opinion, is an impossible problem. You're not going to solve it. It has decreased this year. The first time we've actually seen real decrease. The homeless issue, like the VHA is getting tagged with all these issues that are, I wouldn't want to be in charge of solving them, because you're not. It's like solving pro-choice or pro-abortion, right? It's not going to happen. You're going to have people one way and people the other. I don't care what you do. It's the same thing. And so I think VA gets a lot of blame for that, but all that stuff costs money, and looking, since the budget is a top priority as a nation right now, it's on the chopping block is pretty much what I would wrap that up.